Welcome to Business Leaders Coach, where we educate, enable, equip, and empower you to become the best leader that you can be. My name is Toya Shimbi, founder of Business Leaders Coach. And at Business Leaders Coach, we work with CEOs and their leadership teams, companies that are scaling up and want to accelerate their learning. On this podcast, I bring you practical steps that you can apply in your leadership today. We draw wisdom from some of the best business books, bring on guests and entrepreneurs and authors as well. You can go to businessleaderscoach.com/podcast, subscribe so that we can send each episode and any templates or tools that come with these subsequent episodes. Today, I want to reinforce why it's important for every leader to now encourage each of their team members to learn how to lead themselves first. And so the title of this episode is Why Learning to Lead Yourself is the Essential Skill of the 21st Century. So welcome to episode 45. As we all know, we can all see that our world is rapidly changing, but as things are exponentially changing, we need to really take seriously certain principles that can still be easily overlooked. Now, the premise of today's podcast is based on a quote from one of the most influential voices in management in the 20th century, and that was Peter Drucker. He was a visionary person, and what he said, and he mentioned this quote is around 2000. It captures a lot of the challenges that we are facing in our world today. And let me give you the quote. He said, "In a few hundred years, when the history of our time will be written from a long-term perspective, it is likely that the most important event historians will see is not technology, not the internet, not e-commerce, it is the unprecedented change in the human condition. For the first time, literally, substantial and rapidly growing numbers of people have choices. For the first time, they will have to manage themselves, and society is totally unprepared for it." And that's a quote by Peter Drucker, and I think that it is a profound statement, simply because although self-management has always been every adult's responsibility, that hasn't changed. What has changed is what Peter Drucker highlights as the biggest challenge. And I quote, "The rapidly growing numbers of people have choices." See, that they will have to manage themselves. See, when we break down this statement, you have to understand that this is our biggest challenge. People have to learn how to lead and manage themselves. As I said, it's always been the case, but because you have more choices, it makes it more complicated. And over the last few years with the coronavirus pandemic, you can see that with hybrid working, for instance, or with people working from home, this is now what we want people to learn. We want them to make the right choices, to prioritize their time, to prioritize their day. We want them to be able to do it. And that's the reason why we have not only, I would say, a leadership crisis, but that's the reason why many people are all over the place, because we have so many choices. And so what I want to mention is that this is something that we have to really think about. Now, there's something counterintuitive about this current development. As we see more information being dumped on us, we're going to realize that we are going to need to rely on some of our humane given attributes that we are forgetting that we have, some of the gifts that we have as human beings. And in some situations, we've given our thinking to artificial intelligence. We've outsourced some human attributes that only human beings can really do in the humane way. And so in this episode, I want to share a habit that leaders of the 21st century are going to need to master. You might want to make note of this. It isn't something new, okay? I mean, almost every truly influential leader has taken time to practice this habit. But as I have mentioned, it runs counterintuitive to the way majority of people are living today. And so before I even mention what this habit is, I want to highlight that typically we can, hear that something is good and understand why it is good. We can even recommend it to others, but not practice it ourselves. I think as a society now, most of us, if not all of us, will agree that exercising regularly is a good thing. But it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to put it into practice yourself. This is something that I have had to really take ownership of and change my own habit so that I am now exercising 5 times a week. It's something that I can talk about it, but until I am actually doing it, I still haven't got it. And it is exactly the same with this attribute that I want to encourage that we are going to need as we move forward in this busy 21st century. This habit that I want to mention that you are going to need to start practicing, the reason why I want you to start practicing it first is because then you can recommend it to your team members, but only after you start practicing it yourself. And that practice is what I'm calling solitude. Solitude. So what do we mean by solitude? A rough definition that I'm going to give you is that it is simply getting yourself away from every distraction, giving yourself the space to think. And this can come in various forms. I'll give some more practical ways of how you can do this. But in their book, Lead Yourself First, Inspiring Leadership Through Solitude, Raymond Keithledge and Michael Irwin, they share in this book, they use solitude as the bedrock of how effective leaders get things done. They share why practicing solitude is the way to gain clarity, to enhance your creativity, to stay emotionally balanced, to demonstrate moral courage, and most important, having the space to make wise choices. The book gives examples of major decisions that people such as Dwight Eisenhower, Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King Jr. have made based on spending time in solitude. More and more CEOs now are seeing the need to take time to meditate or also spend time in solitude. This is becoming a new understanding of what is needed to be an effective leader in the 21st century. In his book, Performance Pipeline by Stephen Drucker, he also recommends that leaders set aside time every day for thinking time. So, why such emphasis? See, when we keep taking in information, the problem is that at some point, if we're not finding the space to make sense of it, it just becomes noise. So we need to create that space to allow our brain to either connect the dots or allow our intuition to play its role. And that's the humane part. That's the gift part, the part that our brain actually is trying to figure out what all this information is all about. And there are many things that we actually have the ability to do in some situations purely by intuition. Its role, that's the brain playing its role. That's your gift coming to fruition. We need to realize that sometimes as we are taking in information, that the first and easy answer might not always be the right answer. So if you are the leader of your business, your enterprise, you need to model this. This is not something that can even be just taught. Others have to see you and hear you say things like, I need time to reflect on this. Others must see that you prioritize your thinking time, and you must then encourage them to do likewise. But as I said, only if you are modeling it. Because everybody's so busy, they'll think, well, you're telling us to do it, but I can't see you're not doing this. So the benefit of you doing this is that you will be building a team that is not only relying on you doing the heavy lifting thinking. And if you remember in our podcast on how to lead in a VUCA world, one of the antidotes was understanding. And I said that some of you need that input from your team members. Some of you need to get that understanding that's coming in from your team members or members of staff. Well, here's the thing. If they are not behaving in this way, which is taking time to think, reflect, how can they contribute in a meaningful way? So you can see that you will get the exponential benefit if you create this for yourself and create this also for your team members and perhaps your entire staff as well. So if this is not something that you have been doing, I would recommend that you start small. Maybe just clear out 15 minutes to 30 minutes as often as you can during a week. Take a quiet stroll to the park, get a journal, write things down, write your thoughts down. Just start in that habit, and that way you are beginning to create that space of solitude. And then do you want to go to that next level? Take yourself away on a personal retreat. Book yourself somewhere where you can just spend time just by yourself to quieten down all the noise and then reflect. That could be extending things from a day or two away from the business, where you have this mini retreat in order to be able to gather your thoughts. And if you are a praying person, you can spend time praying, listening, allowing your creativity, allowing the ideas to come to the forefront of your mind. See, this is a picture of how we are going to lead ourselves as we progress into the 21st century. And the younger ones need to see this in action by older people who have or are in leadership. So it becomes more like the normal way of how we do things. I'm going to go back to that quote just to finish it off again, because I want us to really remind ourselves. This was said several years ago, but when we read it, does it not make sense? As Peter Drucker said, in a few hundred years, when the history of our time will be written from a long time perspective, it is likely that the most important event historians will see is not technology, not the internet, not e-commerce. It is the unprecedented change in the human condition. For the first time, literally substantial and rapidly growing numbers of people have choices. For the first time, they will have to manage themselves, and society is totally unprepared for it. This message is preparing you to have that space, that solitude, in order to be able to make the right choices out of the numerous choices that are being presented to us every day. So today we have looked at why learning to lead yourself is the essential skill of the 21st century. The key habit is solitude time. And so I want you to try out, take some time out, book that time, reflect, see the benefits of it. Try it out and let me know how it goes. You can email me, toye@businessleaderscoach.com. Love to hear from you. For now, this is Toye Oshimbi for Business Leaders Coach, signing off. Speak to you soon.